what I find really interesting about your background is that you were an entrepreneur, and now you're on the other side as a investor in the venture business. So, what led you to start your first company, and then secondly, what made you, or what was the decision to take you onto a different direction?
Sure. So, hubris. I had been at a company where I was one of the first employees, and we got public 2.5 years after the company was started, and I thought, well, wow,
hey,
this is easy. Anybody can do this. So, and also, I like the notion of being able to control my own destiny.
Yeah.
I was a big believer I came from an entrepreneurial family, and I was a big believer growing up of always bet on yourself.
Yeah. So you're saying your father was an entrepreneur?
My father was an entrepreneur. My grandfather was an entrepreneur.
Oh, geez, yeah.
So it was one of those, been at a successful startup in terms of the liquidity, and had changed an industry, right? We introduced online payments essentially before people knew what online payments were. So I like that feeling of being able to really innovate and do something new. And when you couple that with wanting to control my own destiny and coming from an entrepreneurial family, and as I said, a bit of hubris, thinking, wow, well, anybody can raise money. And it turned out actually at that time in the mid 90s, it wasn't that tough to raise money as long as you had a good idea and a team that people thought could execute on that idea. So it was a phenomenal experience, and I had got to have both a success and a failure, and in some ways learned far more in the failure than I did in the success. And I think in part because of that failure and because of my experience with my investors and what I expected out of them, that really got me thinking about, if I were an investor, what would I do?
Yeah.
Right? Because you're sitting there and you're looking at your investor across the table, and you're like, well, geez, I really need you to do this for me.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, well, if I have to keep asking, and these guys don't innately understand this, I'm probably missing a bunch of stuff anyhow, because I don't know what they can do for me. So I started thinking about starting a venture fund, much like I thought about a startup.
Yeah.
Right? There's some pain in the market, how we wanted to have our culture of our firm, what areas we wanted to invest in because we saw opportunities that other people weren't tapping into, et cetera. So starting a venture fund for me was no different than starting a company. It's just that it wasn't an operating company, and when you started it, and no one told me this, but I've now learned to learn it well and love it, is that a venture fund is you start it and you're with it for a long time. There's no shutting it down, so to speak.
No, you're running it 10 plus years just on one fund.
Because you have the responsibility of the entrepreneurs.
Exactly.
Right? You can't put money in somebody and then all of a sudden say, well, I'm done, I'm going to walk away.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
No.
So that's how I crossed over, so to speak, and it's been just like for any startup. I've learned something new every day.